Hello, hello, and welcome back to the show. After nearly 10 months off, Organic Gardening for Beginners is back with a few caveats and a very big apology and thank you. And I'll explain all of those. To start, my apology. Last year, I abruptly stopped posting episodes, and I got so many emails and messages, more than I really honestly ever thought I would get, asking what happened. Was I okay? Was I coming back? Where did I go? And honestly, burnout got me. Plain old-fashioned burnout. And when I look back to everything that I was trying to do last spring, it really comes as no surprise. I was doing this weekly podcast. I was at weekly farmers markets. I had a blog. I had an Etsy shop. I had plant fairs that I was going to. Plus, we were still in our first year on our property and trying to get all that set up, and 2 kids. It was insane. It's still a little bit insane, but it's a less chaotic insane these days, to where I feel like, okay, I can come back and really focus on delivering value to the show and to all of you who listened for the first almost 60 episodes, and those of you who are going to hear this and say, oh, okay, cool, good to know, and I'm enjoying my first episode. So burnout aside, it's been an extremely busy past year, but before I get into all that, I want to move into the next thing, which is to say thank you. For anyone who messaged me, who emailed me to ask if I was okay and what had happened and all that, I really appreciate your concern. I appreciate the time you took to send me those messages and make sure that everything was okay. I think I responded to everybody in a relatively time-appropriate fashion. There honestly could have been some that fell through the cracks, and if that was you, then my apologies again. Feel free to reach back out, and I will give you a personalized email. But yeah, everything was fine. Just so burnt out. So much stuff to think of, how many hours I was working, how little sleep I was getting, how many plates I was trying to juggle. It just all came crashing down, and I just wanted to burn the whole thing down. And so I stopped and all the things. But regardless, or irregardless, as we joke in my family, here I am, and I am back. And the one sucky thing about having taken time off is that I broke trust with a lot of you guys who were dedicated weekly listeners, and I'm hoping to rebuild that trust by showing up not once but twice every week for the foreseeable future, because I have so many things I want to talk about, so many things that I want to share with you and educate on, and even not in the spirit of education, but just simply sharing. Like, there are a ton of things that we are trying out on our farm that might be successes, might be failures. They are totally new to us. And, learning in public, as they say, is super valuable as well. So there are lots of things that I have experience with that I want to share. There are a lot of things that are totally new to me that I want to share. So I'm super stoked to be back. Very revived, refreshed, and just raring to go. It is almost spring, and I cannot wait. We had a nice little false spring just recently here, and now it's raining again. It was hailing off and on today. It was really, really cold, even though yesterday it was sunny, and just the weather is, typical spring. I won't even say weird, because this is completely normal for Oregon. If this is your first episode and you've hung on this long, I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Jessica, and I live on 2 acres in Oregon, in the Willamette Valley, Portlandish area. I've gardened for forever. I love sharing gardening knowledge with everybody, because growing your food, growing your flowers, getting out in the dirt is just so important, so vital. And if you want the specs, then we are in zone 8A/B. When that whole USDA zone change happened, we went from A to B, and my last frost date is somewhere around 1st to 15th of May, give or take. I think it was a little bit earlier last year. I'd have to look at my notes. And then the first frost usually happens around the end of October. Although, again, last year, I think it was a little bit later, because I remember seeing my zinnias still blooming through the beginning of November, and it wasn't until maybe mid-November that they died. So that's kind of my position. I'm a very practical person, a very low-key person. Someone called me Zen with the garden information. I really don't get caught up in the dogma and the you must do this, and if you don't do this, it's going to die, and if it dies, it dies. Oh well, that's what another packet of seed is for. So I'm very chill with my gardening stuff, but I do have a lot of experience to share, starting gardens all over the country, and just loving being outside. So I want to jump now into the third thing I mentioned right at the top of the show, which is a slight change. So the name of the show might change in the future. I don't know. I'm still playing with that a little bit. But what I do know is going to change is, aside from 2 weekly episodes instead of just one, I used to only release on Tuesdays. And right now the plan is to do Mondays and Thursdays, even though this episode's coming out Friday, but you do what you can. So I want to talk more about using what you grow. You know, I've given lots of information about starting a garden and seed sowing and what to grow and how to water your garden and season extension and all that good stuff in the past almost 60 episodes that I've got. But I never really talk about how to use it. And one of the main reasons that I garden, aside from just loving digging in the dirt, is I want to grow as much food as I can. I so value the food that comes from my garden. And if your garden is a little pot on your patio, or, you know, a grow tent under a grow light or whatever, or you have a big garden, little garden outside, whatever your situation is, and whatever my situation has been in the past, I love and prioritize eating in the garden. And I'm hoping that that's either something that you equally love or you need help with, because the second part of our gardening equation is, what do we do with it? We grow all this stuff. What do we do? And, you know, maybe that includes a pretty bouquet that we cut from our flower patch or the flowers that are mixed in, because I know you're using companion planting, right? I talk about that a lot. I still use companion planting, even as I'm trying to increase our food production from the garden. So I want to talk more about how to use your produce, some ideas of things that I do with it, dabble a little bit into getting some of that into canning or fermenting or preserving in other ways. This is not going to become a cooking show. Don't worry. I'm not going hardcore into that niche or vein of information, but I do want to make sure that this produce, this bounty, this accomplishment that you achieve season after season gets used to its fullest potential. So that is one of the changes that I'm making. So the episodes will still be beginner friendly, really accessible, super low key, because I cook the way I garden. And that means I just throw a bunch of stuff together, add the herbs and spices, and almost always it turns out okay. Every now and again, there's that one dish where you're like, I guess the chickens are going to get this one. But, you know, same thing with the garden. Almost everything grows well. There is that occasional crop that doesn't make it, and that goes to the chickens too. So it's all gravy, baby. And other than that, I'm jazzed to be back. I'm super excited, super stoked for this season. Our garden is coming back to life, which is so gratifying to see. We busted our humps last year and fall in the garden, planting so many things throughout the season. We put in a bunch of strawberries. I put in a bunch of perennial flowers. We put in fruit trees that did okay last year. You know, of course, we lost a few things. We had a persimmon that just didn't even attempt to live. It just immediately died when we planted it. And then the others that, you know, they put out their leaves and stuff, they of course didn't fruit. It was their first year for the trees anyways. And this year they are starting to bud out. They're starting to leaf out. They look fantastic. My strawberries put out so many runners over the winter. And so we really get to start to kind of track that progress and know that all that work we did last year is starting to pay off. I should explain that means my husband and my 2 kids help. Hindrance, you know, that's up for debate, but they're in the garden with us all the time, pulling weeds, pulling new seedlings, and stealing all of the ripe strawberries. They are 3 and 5, so they're growing up in the garden, eating dirt, playing, all that good stuff, barefoot, more often than not. But we also added some new beds. We changed up a little bit of the fence enclosure so that we have a little bit more space. We're going to plant a bunch of corn that we didn't do last year. Just all kinds of exciting stuff that I'm going to share over these next episodes to kind of give you a little more context of what we're leaning into this year and the things that we're leaving behind, because there are a couple little aspects to the garden that I'm going to change up. And I want to share it all. I want to inspire and motivate and hopefully be the recipient of another email, because I can't explain the joy I get when I get these emails of, I've been wanting to garden. It felt really intimidating. I found your show and now I'm just going to go for it. I'm starting my garden, or I did start my garden. Those emails are amazing and I love getting them. So if you have a story like that from this show, I would love to hear it. They are always fantastic to read, and I share them with my husband, and it's great. It's such a joy to know that there are that many more gardeners in the world growing food and, as I always say, getting in the dirt. So that's it for this one. Thank you for bearing with me through that absence, and thank you for being back. Again, I apologize for the abrupt end, and I just cannot wait for this season. So talk to you later. Bye.